Welcome viewers, this is Media Track episode 28 and I am Frederick Noronha. With me is Devika Sequeira who will take you to the lead story of today.
Thank you, Frederick. Another week and quite a few, big stories have happened. But I think we should sort of discuss the decision of the Lokayukt, rather the the government is calling it merely recommendations, but it is the order of the Lokayukt Acharya, who has held that the mining renewals, lease renewals that happened between 2014 and 2015 were totally a brazen breach of the law. And the Lokayukt Mishra has recommended that the government file FIRs against the former Chief Minister Lakshmikant Parsekar, who was in the saddle at that point, and two other government officials. One of them was Acharya, who was Prasanna Acharya, and he was director for mines, and the secretary for mines, Pawan Kumar Sen. But the strictures passed by the court were quite firm and they were quite damning if you look at it. So Pramod, the former Chief Minister has taken the stance that
but before we go into that, Devika, would it be right to say that this is one of the early decisions of the Lokayukt and it's come with a bang also?
I'm not sure it is an early decision, but the fact that he has made these kind of observations, that this is obviously corruption within the government, etc., and these total high up officials should CBI inquiry should be instituted against them is a commentary on how decisions are taken in total violation of the law. And look at the judge's comments. He said the second renewal which was granted to these mining leases was to satisfy the greed of leaseholders.
So just to take us back a little bit, what exactly is the Lokayukt pointing to? Which renewal? And
so there were these 88 mining leases that were renewed by the government under Parsekar. You know that Manoj Parrikar left the state in November of 2014, and that file obviously landed on the desk of the new Chief Minister at that point, who was Lakshmikant Parsekar, and he quickly signed off on these 88 leases and renewed them, though there were all kinds of cases against these people for violations of the mining rules and whatever. So have you gone through that report? The case was filed by the Goa Foundation, and Dr. Claude Alvarez has made these observations. Now, what he has said, because Goa Foundation was the petitioner in the case, so he said that the Goa Lokayukt's order on renewal of mining leases, he said that the Goa Foundation will continue to follow up on this and see that the recommendations are taken note of by the government and acted upon. Now, what Alvarez is also saying is that I don't think any government in power, whether it is the Congress or BJP, he says he would give away 88 mining leases worth 79,000 crore rupees to mining companies without charging something. Even for a job that is a government job, one has to pay 2 to 3 lakhs. So, Alvarez claimed that the deal with the mining companies would have been done at the party level.
It's a very complex case, but it's a very important case because the twist and turns is difficult to keep abreast with it, but I think it involves a whole part of Goa's economic future in that sense.
After the Supreme Court quashed the renewal of mining leases in February of 2018 and directed the state government to cease all mining activity by March 15 of 2018, Goa Foundation filed a petition complaint with the Lokayukt alleging that renewals that were carried out from November of 2014. If you look at it, take a peek back, it was the month that Parrikar moved to Delhi as defense minister, appeared to be a result of corrupt acts by the then chief minister and officer and director of mines. So he asked, the Goa Foundation asked that action be taken against these people for this kind of corruption.
So Devika, the point that you are making, I mean, is that this is a very complex and intricate story, and even I have to be honest, I've lost track of it along the way because there's so many developments that keep on happening. Two things that come up here. One is like we've lost count of how the story got started, and each side blaming the others. The government blaming the NGOs.
This is not a case of blaming. It's a brazen case of corruption within the government and the collusion with the mining companies. And this is what everyone is saying. This is the response we are getting from even politicians who are saying it. I mean, in fact, AAP has put it quite well. They have said that this shows how the Goa government was being so controlled by the mining lobby. And now for Parrikar to say that the Lokayukta order is no proof of corruption, and for the chief minister to just sidestep this whole issue and say that he will consult the Advocate General on the Lokayukta report, and then again on Thursday he made the statement to reporters just before the assembly session, which is to start in early February. So he was asked on the sidelines, what about this? And he said that this is just recommendatory in nature and it is not binding on that. So it just shows how the government is still playing down the seriousness of the issue.
So the second question that comes up, which you already answered, is what is the responses to it? Parrikar is saying that there's no proof of corruption, and the chief minister is saying that he would kind of ask the AG and things like that.
Yeah.
Is it also possible that there is some politics within the BJP that is coming out here? Or
no, I don't think there's politics always. I mean, when is there not politics? When the Congress was in power, they too favored the mining lobby, and we know what was the result of that, and how in fact Parrikar and the BJP came to power in 2012 on the back of the whole mining scandal, the mining scam, so to speak. And now it has sort of hit back at the BJP, because who is not involved in this? People, in fact the Lokayukta himself is making these observations. Okay, he is saying that people who are powerful, now look at his comments, only an ostrich with its head deeply buried in the pristine sand of the Arabian Sea can say that the overnight renewals affected at a speed faster than that of the fastest jaguar or cheetah had been routinely done in the course of official transactions without any iota of malified intention. So this is the crux of it. What he is saying is this reeks of corruption, and he wants a CBI inquiry to look into it, which I doubt is ever going to happen. Now the Congress, Girish Chodankar, president of the Congress, has already made a statement and said that they will file a complaint before the CBI and ask for a CBI inquiry. But the Congress's hands are not clean. The party's hands are not clean on this at all.
Unfortunately, it all plays down to party lines, and each one defending their own, and different factions, and there are politicians who have changed over, so they have probably taken controversial decisions then.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how does this resolve? Because do you feel the papers are the right fora through which we can understand the issue? Because it breaks on a...
No, definitely, absolutely. The media is the conduit for the public to know the truth, and in this case the truth is out there, because I've seen the Goa Foundation documents, and even they are extremely thorough with their petitions. They really study the issue thoroughly, and they even access their yearly, of these companies, their annual reports and their income tax filings and all that. So they have it all so thorough, and it is there, the calculations are there for everybody to see, and it has convinced this judge, the Lokayukta Judge Mishra. So
you have followed this story very closely.
yes,
both
because we've been
now and before.
reporting it for
Yeah.
years and years, you know. So what happens is that when the BJP is in the opposition, it raises a big stink. When it is in power, it plays it down, and it makes it seem as if, you know, it's just an innocent party on the sidelines, and the file just landed so innocently on Parsika's desk. But the Lokayukta is saying that you know, he's satisfied that the public functionaries concerned have committed criminal offence as well as offence of criminal conspiracy. These are his very words. An appropriate FIR is to be registered against, of course, Parsekar, Swain and Acharya, the three people he says were involved in this.
While we are on the point, there are some other Supreme Court judgments which are due shortly.
Yes, yes.
One has already come on MOPA, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But a related judgment is about the Supreme Court reserving its verdict on Goa's mined INO. This is in the Navin Times, the O which was already mined and which is waiting there. So I don't know which way the judgment will go, because we've had a lot of adverse judgments in that sense, adverse from a people's perspective,
Yeah.
including MOPA, which you might want to talk more about, and of course the you know, the Citizenship Act and things like that.
Yeah. So the you know, other big story that has come out is with the Supreme Court order, which is asking speakers of, you know, of the state and whatever to re-examine the power to disqualify MPs. So what the Supreme Court is saying is that it is pitching for a permanent body or independent mechanism that will decide on these disqualification petitions, because they just hang fire for months and months and months. Now this order of the Supreme Court,
And they're quite arbitrary and politicized also.
absolutely,
no, their decisions, depending on who's in power. And
yes, and you know, they're partisan. Most speakers in our state assemblies and in parliament obviously have been partisan. So the three-judge bench headed by Justice Rohinton Narman pointed out that it was time that Parliament should revisit the rationale in giving exclusive powers to the Speaker for deciding disqualification petitions. Now in this case, it was one Congress MLA who had defected to the BJP in Manipur, and his petition has been pending with the Speaker for 4 months, and the Supreme Court has told that the petition has to be decided within 4 weeks, but it has given its recommendation that all speakers should decide these petitions in the outer limit of 3 months. Now this will have a bearing on the Goa case, which has been, you know, those 10 Congress
the recent one.
MLAs who defected, and before that so
But
many
Goa
others.
has had a long history with this in the 90s.
Exactly.
And
in fact, the Goa has contributed to case law study, you know, and in disqualification. In fact, the whole idea of tightening the 10th schedule of the Constitution is because of the amount of defections. Small states like Goa and in the northeast, they were happening constantly. Governments were being changed and so on. So, you know, the Goa case has been pending for 5 months, and the reaction of Rajesh Patnekar, who is the Speaker, has been very much similar to Parsekar's reaction, and Sawant's reaction in the mining case. He's saying that does the Supreme Court, I don't know, does the Supreme Court have the right to tell Parliament what to do? You know, it's the same sort of
executive and
exactly.
But on the other hand, the judgment which came through about MOPA was, you know, caused a lot of disquiet among environmental campaigners, because for a year MOPA was on the back burner, and all of a sudden it came up. But then there were other reports which said that because of the delay, the promoters had some financial problems and things like that. So I had just been following it from the perspective of the environmentalist.
Okay. So let's look at briefly at this. You have more on it, sorry.
Yeah, so it basically says that MOPA gets all clear from the Supreme Court. This is on actually almost a week back, just after our last recording on January 17th, last Friday. I think it's an important story, so worth getting noticed. And the Goan has carried it as a lead story together with a whole lot of box items and explaining what would happen and why. The courts, somehow it's easy to get disappointed because they keep the issue hanging fire, and sometimes they almost get to the point, but it's never good enough.
But MOPA will have serious repercussions in Goa, I believe, because there have been cases where fancy new airports have come up and they've been white elephants just left there, not used. Now I don't know whether MOPA will actually happen, how many years it will take to come up, and whether it will benefit Goa as much as Maharashtra. That is one of the the grievances of hoteliers. Now there are hoteliers in North Goa who will protest. In South Goa who will protest MOPA coming up.
And then related to the other point that we were just talking about, in the Mirses case, which you will mention shortly, the issue also came up whether MOPA is just a land kind of land speculation deal in that sense, no? Because you corner off land around the place and you buy it up and sell it costly.
That case had not had anything to do with
MOPA? Not in that direct sense, but in terms of politicians and land speculation in a wider sense.
Well, all politicians seem to be involved in land. But the sort of more touching story was, of course, the case of the seafarer who was among those who were captured by the pirates from Benin, apparently, and they were kidnapped from a ship called MV Duke on December 15. 18, including 3 Goans, were released this past Saturday. But one of them, Brito Silva from Ambali, he died in captivity in adverse conditions. One still hasn't got enough, details of how he died, why he died. Was he ill? He must have fallen ill or something, and the family is still,
But this piracy thing, Devika, actually, it seems to be quite serious from what one occasionally hears of it. We don't read much about it in the papers. But whenever there is some seafarer issue, Indian level, there is most likely to be a Goan involvement in it. Plus, piracy seems to be serious along the Africa coast. A captain friend of mine called Captain Norbert Rebello, he wrote a novel, called Beware Pirates and things like that. And you were also mentioning that you had some personal knowledge of.
Yes. Personal, I know someone who experienced pirates coming on the ship and taking over everything, but they were only interested in the money and whatever else they could steal, and then they went off. But it was
scary.
It must be a very, very scary experience, no doubt.
Yeah, because I mean, you can't flee, you can't flee, both of you on the ship, you and the pirates, and this is a serious issue, but we don't hear too much about it. I'm sure many others must have had close experiences, at least a few other Goan seafarers.
That's right. So what else were you looking at?
The other story that came our way was the death of the Sultan of Oman. And there was this interesting story in the Herald Cafe. It's a kind of a feature where Dulcie D'Cruz discusses when a royal demise in the Sultanate moved so many Goans in Oman. So she took the Goa angle of the death and their response to his death, to the Sultan's death. And the Sultan had a good positive image, unlike some other Gulf rulers.
In fact, I read quite an interesting post on Facebook by Wendell Rodericks. He had met him in his early years when he was working in Oman, I think, as
in catering, no?
In catering, and he had changed the menu, and it was highly appreciated by the Sultan. And he was even called by him, etc. So Wendell had put out this post.
So when you live so many years in the Gulf, I'm sure it grows on you, though of course Goans and Indians don't have the chance of becoming Gulf citizens. But they must be having such a close interaction with the society and the culture and the language and whatever.
I presume, but yet we know so little, I think, about the Gulf, and I'm told some friends of mine who live in the Gulf have even told me some of their beaches are very beautiful, but one doesn't really hear much about it.
And unlike places like Kerala, where they probably learn Arabic in schools and all, it's not yet a part of us.
I know. The one place obviously that one hears a lot about is Dubai, because it is so developed, and it tries to attract tourists with its big shopping malls, etc. And the hotels which have these big New Year bashes.
You know, as you know, in one of my avatars, I also have this book connection. So we do books and things like that. So there has been a growing interest in writing about these places. There's one book on Kuwait, another essay on Saudi, and you know this fact that all early Goans used to be called Basurkars because they were earlier settled. They all went to Basra. So they were called Basurkars and things like that. Another neighbor of mine who has written a draft but cannot convince her to publish it. She's worked on the Goans of Aramco in that sense.
Aramco, who worked in the company.
Yeah, in the company. So they have a kind of a settlement there and things like that. So it's very
Where
interesting.
Where is that based
if I'm not mistaken,
Saudi?
It's in Saudi or one.
Right. I think it's one of those big, huge settlements in Saudi. That's true. So with this CAA being so much in the news, Frederick, there was this very interesting report in the Times of India. It was more informative. It talked about the National Population Register survey will start in Goa from April 16 to May 30, while the House listing survey of the Census 2020 will start from February to February 19 to 28. Now the thing is, one isn't yet certain what this National Population Register is all about, and there's still so much conflict, and there is even the statements coming out from the central government and the central government ministers have been very contradictory, if you notice.
What are the questions that will be asked? What are the documents to be produced?
What are the documents that need to be produced? So here it says details under NPR can be whatever come house listing survey. So they will ask you name of persons, names of people to appear in NPR, relationship to head of family, whatever, sex, date of birth, marital status, etc., etc. And for the first time, the NPR will ask for mother tongue, date and place of birth of parents, place of last residence, passport number, if you are a holder of an Indian passport, voter ID number, driving license number. Now, one minister has said that those who have a passport and have a and a driving license and whatever will have to give these details. Those who don't have to. But isn't that strange that they have two sets of sort of requirements of the same citizens of the country?
They called it voluntary. So they said if you have it, it's like you have to give it, and if you don't have it, then how does it become voluntary?
Exactly, it becomes mandatory, but it's quite strange that some citizens are being asked for it, and those who don't have it, okay, you don't have it, so you don't have to give it. And on Thursday, there was this report I saw in The Wire. It quoted various newspaper reports from Indian Express, etc., where there was this huge rush from Central Bank of India in a small village in Kerala, it was, where people they put an ad saying that you have to supply your NPR details for the KYC, for the bank KYC. And there was a rush to the bank, and people started withdrawing their money. Yes. And over 1 crore was withdrawn within a few hours. People were so scared that they were not going to be able to provide this NPR details because the NPR hasn't even taken place. And no one knew whether this was another document one had to produce apart from your Aadhaar card and PAN card and etc., or if it was those who have the NPR can give. So that clarity is completely lacking.
While on this point, in the social media, there was this person called Kalap. I think it's Srinivas Kalap or something. I'm not very sure.
He is Ramakant Kalap's son.
Son, okay, I was thinking. And he has been making a lot of interesting points on the NPR in that sense. He also gave a talk at Asagaon 6.
Okay.
So some of our friends went there to listen to him out and things like that. So he keeps posting on his Facebook page.
Right.
Quite interestingly.
Yeah.
So he says these are the documents that you might need to keep ready and things like that. So
okay, but I don't know. I mean, some people are saying don't respond to this. If they come to you, ask them, do you have your documents? Where is your birth certificate?
That has gone down on Facebook, no? That has gone down on Facebook.
But I can tell you that it has really put the scare of of one's life into most people. I have a friend who doesn't have a birth certificate because she was not born in Goa. She's very much Goan, and she's worried sick. How is she going to get this birth certificate from another state in India where they don't know anybody, they don't know the. So if someone from Goa can be so this, you can imagine people who are poor, Dalits, etc. How are they going to prove their nationality, so to speak?
While just to shift gears a bit, this Rostov campaign that involves painting the roads, it is done by Cecile Rodriguez, who is Goa's prominent dancers.
Yeah.
So she and a team of others have been painting the speed breakers on the roads which the government has failed to do, and they call it the Rostov campaign, #Rostov.
Yeah.
And they painted quite a few speed breakers around the Kalangut area in that sense.
Okay.
And I think her point is she gave a very impassioned appeal saying that this is the government job, they should be doing it, and shame on the government kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
But there was a report I'd read quite some time. A study was done in India, and it said that speed breakers cause more accidents than they prevent. So I think the government needs to seriously look at it, because when you're driving and you suddenly, especially in the night, you chance upon a speed breaker, you can have a serious fall, especially if you're riding a bike or something. Well, there was this one little, it's not a small story, it became quite a big story. In fact, you had just mentioned it was about this railway manager who made this comment. He thought the people, Alina Saldana and the people from her constituency were Portuguese rather than Indian, and why should...
so when she protested about the railways, he said, he referred to her as if she was Portuguese.
Yes.
And it went viral on YouTube and things like that on the net, saying that showing her protesting very strongly, saying that we are Goan, we are Indian. What are you calling us Portuguese?
His whole thing was that your Portuguese houses, why should they be protected? And when there are Indian houses which are 5,000 year old, and they have been
damaged, destroyed before building.
No, not destroyed.
Okay.
They've given way to build the railway track.
Okay.
So why should only Portuguese houses be protected? Was his theory. And
so this is a misunderstanding on many levels, no? Because I think the Portuguese house is also a misnomer in that sense.
I don't think it's a misunderstanding. I think it's a kind of thing that has sunk into a lot of people in India, that this whole divide that is happening, and it's a kind of communal divide that is become extremely poisonous within the
which is sad, no? Because
social kind of fabric of the country,
because
and it's being driven by a very by a political agenda that wants to encourage it rather than discourage it.
In our school days, unity and diversity was the cornerstone of everything that was done in India, and it was celebrated in that sense. Today it's not understood and misunderstood, and deliberately misunderstood, or whatever you want to say. So I think at this point the clock tells us that we've run out of time. Thank you for watching. We'll be with you back next week.
Thank you for watching.